Hey guys, and welcome back to the WonderTag podcast. So, Aaron and I have a special but serious topic to discuss today.
Yes, today we are going to try to yeet out some horrible behaviors that have been happening in the Pokemon community for good this time. This is, it's kind of insane that we're still talking about this. It's been the last week of my life, but I know it's also been the last couple years. And honestly, since probably the beginning of this game for most women. And so, of course, it's the topic of how women are treated in this game. And so we want to start by saying that we're going to be talking about some specific, we're going to be talking about some specific behaviors today, but also we're going to be sharing some stories of our own and some stories that were submitted to us. So we'd like to start by thanking every single girl that, number one, has shared their story before this podcast, because there are definitely some really brave girls that have come forward and shared stories at other times. And we'd also like to thank every girl that submitted a story to us for tonight. Some of you submitted yours anonymously, so we'll be protecting your identity and the specifics of your story. And then some of you did want to attach your name, so we'll be doing that. And so we just want to say thank you so much to everybody.
Yeah, I'd also like to let everybody know that if you are a woman in this community and there's ever a point in time where you feel helpless or in danger by any means, being harassed online or maybe somebody at a tournament, if I am anywhere nearby or any hour that I'm awake and able to talk to you, I'm more than welcome to help you. And I just want to let everybody know that there's always going to be someone there to help you in these type of situations.
Yes, so you can contact me on my personal Twitter or contact us on the WonderTag Twitter, which will both be linked below, or you can contact Noelle on one of her 6 Twitters.
Oh my god, I just have 2.
You pretty much have 6. You got like 3.
I mean,
including the WonderTag podcast.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm just kidding. Noelle has 2 Twitters. But we also want to start this off by saying that we don't want to name drop any of the offenders in this podcast. And the reason behind that, because this is a comment that I know Noelle and I have both gotten a lot this week. Just, why don't you out the person and we could weed them out from the community and that would fix the problem. But that's not necessarily the case. So when you post a screenshot with a person's name and expose them, you are demonizing that person. The moment that you cover their name and add other examples of the same behavior from different men is the moment that it becomes a demonized behavior. So that's kind of our goal tonight, is to demonize the behavior and not necessarily the person, because that's the only way we're going to see real change, is if we use this as a teaching moment and not a witch hunt, so to speak.
Yeah, and since we are doing it this way, a lot of people may be like, oh, well, then nothing's going to happen to the person. I would like to personally say all of the stories have either have concluded, or any of the people that we are talking about are going through a process through TPCI or authorities. And I just wanted to make that clear.
Right. And I also think that I personally know people in my own local league that I really like, that have done some pretty shady things or some things that have made me uncomfortable. And I might use them as examples in this podcast. And I would never, they're my friends. They belong. It's part of my story and part of my experience with harassment or unwanted attention. But I think that the best way for people, and I've addressed this with them personally as well, by the way, but the only way a person is going to change is if you give them the opportunity to.
Yep.
If you go ahead and attack them and say this person's a harasser or whatever, it takes away that opportunity for real change to happen. And this is a topic that we've been talking about pretty much since the beginning of this game. I know it's been an issue since I started playing, and I know it's been an issue that's been talked about a lot. And it's still not, it still is, I would argue that it's getting worse. And I think that that is largely due not solely to the fact that the community has a tendency to witch hunt a little bit, but I think it has a lot to do with that.
I feel like it potentially has reason to do with that, but I also, for someone that has been playing the game for as many years as I am, even though it has been on and off, I do have to say that more recently, in the past, like, let's say, I think more like 3-4 years, our community has exploded and has grown to an extreme number. So I feel like the more volume of players that we have, the more incidents we have, and the more good times we have. I mean, yin and yang both happen. So that's why I feel like since our population has grown so much, this is definitely a topic that should not be shut down.
Absolutely. And I think that that's something that's been happening a lot lately, is that it's been getting shut down more than anything. And I think that's why I feel so passionate about wanting to talk about it tonight. And by the way, I know that there's going to be at least one person that says hashtag not all men. And that's true. There are a lot of really great guys in this community. There's a lot of really great players, and I've made a lot of friends in this community. But this is an issue, and if you are silent, you know, what is the phrase? Silence is a side.
Yeah.
Yeah, silence is a side. So, all right. So moving on, I guess, just into the topics that we're going to be talking about. I want to start by talking about just kind of generally the general overview of what happens to women in this community, how they're treated, and just keeping it very general, and then we're going to get into some more specific examples. So the first one is gender and skill. So whenever this topic comes up into conversation, you'll always have somebody that says, why can't we just play the game? Why do we always have to talk about this? Like, gender has nothing to do with skill, just play the game. And that's true. Gender has nothing to do with skill. But there is a correlation between feeling comfortable in a community and playing. And if you don't feel comfortable in a community, you're not going to play in that community. So I think that a lot of this ties in also with underestimating women and their competency in the game. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I have personally had experiences where I've been very, very underestimated playing this game as a woman. And I will never forget the first regional that I attended, coming back into the game after my small break. And as I sat down in my first match, you know, I'm personally a little bit nervous because this is the first time I played a Masters since I stopped playing. And, you know, it's a much larger crowd, a lot more experienced players. It's a higher skill gap. And the guy that I sat next to just thought I was there for fun. And, you know, like, we're all here to have fun and play the game, but, like, I didn't pay for...
He didn't treat you as a competitive player.
Yeah, I didn't pay for gas, a plane ticket, food, a hotel room, a registration to make it all this way where I could just play at a local tournament, okay? There's nothing wrong for going to regional and playing for fun if that's what you're there for. That is 100% fine. But don't assume that. And it was very, very clear it was because I was a girl, you know. I got comments like, "Oh, so did you come here with your boyfriend? Wow, your boyfriend gave you a good list." You know, and like, what if I didn't have a boyfriend, okay? All right, what if I was just like what man in my life? What if I didn't even like guys, okay? Like exactly. and I feel like that's kind of like a staple that people kind of pinpoint on girls. There was and it happened again at the same tournament, and it got to the point where, you know what, I just went along with it, and I'm really glad I did because I won that round. Okay? And I sat down and, you know, like I got the, you know, same old questions or whatever. Oh, who did you come with? And I was like, oh, I came with my boyfriend. Which, by the way, I do travel with my boyfriend. But to be very clear, I actually taught him how to play the card game so he could play with me. So I was like, oh yeah, I came here with my boyfriend and I haven't been playing for that while, so I'm sorry if like I make any mistakes. And you know, I just played off the card just to kind of see how it would go. And it was actually hilarious because he almost like boosted up like this ego, like a peacock with his giant feathers. And he's like, oh yeah, no, it's okay, and blah 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 blah.
That's incredible.
And it was just so, but the thing is, like, it just blew me away that, like, that's what this person was digging for, was dominance. Like,
it's gross.
It really was.
I had a pretty, not quite identical, but similar experience at North American Internationals in 2017, where I played I guess you would say it's kind of like the Open, but it was like a standard tournament for Masters. And I played this guy, and you could just tell. And I think this is another thing, like a lot of people don't realize, they may not necessarily even say something to you. You can just tell from their body language and the way that they treat you. It's very patronizing. It's very, you know, degrading. And I had this guy, and he, you know, sat down, and I was playing Decidueye. It was Kettler's List. Again, net decking is not bad. But, yeah. And, you know, we're just playing, and I was just there playing, and he was just so, like, you could tell he was not taking the match seriously at all. It was, like, almost like he was sitting up straight, and then as soon as I sat down across from him, he slumped in his chair and started treating the whole thing like a joke. His friend was sitting next to him, and he was just like joking the whole time. And this was around the time that Lele was like, you know, new, I guess. Lele wasn't new, but it was like newer, and it was really expensive. And he was like talking, he was like, yeah, I'm going to get a rainbow Lele, and I'm going to get good on it or something. And he's like, you know, just talking to his friend, like, first of all, that is just like the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I just want to mention that because it was just so dumb. But yeah, you know, he's just like not taking it seriously. He's making jokes the whole time. And let me tell you, I was really, that Kettler's List was wasted on me at the time because I was not that good. But I sure did kick his butt, and it felt so good. And the only reason I'm even using this as an example is because he played my friend that I traveled with there next, and his demeanor in that game was completely different, and you could tell.
Yeah, and you know, and this is like a good example of something that may be unconscious to the person, you know, like in their behavior and how they approach people, because just sitting back and listening to that, you know, it didn't seem very intentional, but like almost like a learned behavior.
Right.
So that is, you know, something that can be misunderstood as a purposeful behavior, not giving it any excuse or saying it's right, but it's something to also be aware of.
Right. This guy probably didn't mean anything by it. He probably didn't mean to hurt my feelings or treat me as inferior, but some of these things are inherent, and we have to understand them, and we have to address them.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, you know, that kind of leads us off to, that kind of leads us off to, like, our first story. Somebody submitted this story, and this is a situation where they were playing a game, and the whole demeanor changes after an issue occurs. So, the person that submitted this wanted to be anonymous. And the story goes, Nationals of 2014, I was 17 years old. I was playing against a guy in his mid-20s or so. He attached a prism energy to his aromates on accident. Subsequently, can't move the energy off because it's a prism energy, because aromatase is not a basic. He then said, fuck, I always mess up when I play girls because I can't take them seriously.
Oof.
Oh my god. I did not say anything, and I just took my easy win. After the game, he asked me how old I was. I told him I was 17, and he asked me, when do you turn 18? Want to call me up then? And I sheepishly got up and told him I had a boyfriend. He asked me who my boyfriend was, or who my boyfriend is, and then he'll beat him up. And I just rushed off into the crowd to find my friends. Later on in that day, I was with my good friend, or I'm sorry, I was with my boyfriend and a few of my other good friends, and I saw this dude again who looked at me from across the crowd and said, is this him? We just left. We left the venue. I was newer to Pokemon, and I hadn't experienced anything like that before. I know the name of the guy, but he hasn't played in years. So this is an example of a this is just straight up harassment. There was obviously ill intent behind it.
Exactly. It's insane that happened to an underage girl. It's never okay to say something like that to anybody that is underage.
Yeah, and I read through a lot of stories since we got a lot of submissions, and I'm sorry, but one thing that made me physically sick to my stomach, was the fact that some of these stories were from girls that are underage and got the comment of, call me when you're 18. And it breaks my heart. And I feel it personally because I've had situations like this happen within this community and out of this community, because I've been playing this card game as a kid, and there's nothing I want to do more than protect the kids of this community, of right. Every gender and age, because they're the upcoming community, okay? And they're here to play a children's card game, and they're children playing a card game.
Right, I agree with that. Being a children's and teen librarian, I kind of also am on that same vibe, just because I think about like my kids at the library and what I would do to protect them. And, you know, I don't want to go off on a tangent or anything, but we do talk about like crises and like what we would do in crisis situations. Sorry. What we would do in crisis situations, and I would absolutely do everything in my power to protect those kids. And I know that that's like a specific like personality thing, but I think about that a lot too, just because I feel like it's our position in Masters to kind of look out for the younger kids, because, you know, when I was that age, I had no idea. I had guys in their 20s. You know, I grew up in New York and I went to a lot of shows, and I had guys in their 20s when I was like 14 years old trying to sleep with me. And that's not okay. And at the time, I didn't know how to be strong in my approach and how to like really just, you know, honestly, I wish that I had done more at the time for myself, and I didn't know what to do at the time for myself. And so I feel like it's good that we're talking about this tonight, because this could potentially be a resource for girls that don't know. And that's something that we're going to talk about at the end as well.
Yeah. And like, so there are a lot of, you know, like different types of harassment, online, versus in real life. So a lot of the, stories and experiences that, were shared with me or in life, in real life situations. I did get a handful of screenshots on, like online, and a handful, I'm probably not going to share a lot of the actual conversational screenshots, because I don't feel like, I don't want, again, like if you've had that conversation with that person, I don't want to put that female in danger by any means. So these next couple of online harassment situations are going to be from my personal experiences. So with my personal experiences, these next couple of I'll be reading the screenshots, but these couple of conversations are considered minor harassment. All harassment sucks. It's all real bad. Minor.
Yes, please don't do it. Don't do a harassment.
Don't do a harassment. It's a bad thing. But when I say minor type of harassment, it's something that made me feel uncomfortable, but did not make me feel like I was in any type of danger. It just kind of turned me off. It made me feel uncomfortable and not good. Like, it makes me want to steer away from that person. So the first type of conversation that I have multiples of is messaging me consistently without any kind of engagement from me. So somebody saying, hi, hola, how was your weekend? What are you doing tonight? Hi, what you doing tonight? How have you been? Hey, how have you been? How was your night? What tournaments are you going to? Are you going to X regional? Are you going to any League Cup soon? Hey, when are you going to be in the area again? So all of those, that was all from one person, and the timestamps on these go like from November 30th, December 3rd, December 10th, December 13th, December 20th, and like, oh, so sorry, even before that, like, so November 25th, November 26th, November 27th, November 30th, December 3rd. It's consistently happening throughout an extended amount of time where I have not engaged in the conversation at all. So at one point, I did end up just muting the chat because I personally had bad experience from just blocking people and engaging with people like that are very consistent.
Right.
So
I feel like that's something a lot of people don't consider, is like blocking doesn't work for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so easy with like just being able to get a new number. There's apps where you can make up a new number to text, okay? Like, there's been situations where I have blocked numbers, I have blocked accounts, and all it takes for them is one new Gmail address, and they got a new number, they got a new page, they got a whatever, they need to contact me again.
Right, and it also creates a situation where you've then made an enemy out of this person that obviously is very, very intense and very, very interested, and you've made an enemy out of them. You know, what if you see them at a regional? What if you see them at a League Cup?
Exactly. And it's almost like a form of engagement when you like, oh wow, they actually did read my messages, and oh wow, they did block me.
I had a guy once message me on Facebook. It was the same thing, like, hey, hi, hello, again, hey, and I just never answered him. And he followed me on Instagram, and then he messaged me like, hey, twice, like 2 days in a row on there, and then he was like, check your Facebook messages.
Oh my god, no.
And I was like, dude, like, check yourself, take a hint.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's the other thing, is like, girls don't owe you an explanation. Like, you're the one reaching out to them. They didn't reach out to you. And you're putting the ball in their court, and their decision not to pass it back is their decision. And they don't owe you a, sorry, I'm not interested.
Yeah, and you know what? And again, there's two ways of confronting the situation, okay? There's one, the route that we just talked about, like just completely ignoring them, putting them on mute, and just letting it go. Another route, which can be dangerous in some situations, or can be very, very helpful and clip the problem at the bud, and that is just being a complete 100% honest, like, hey, I am not interested, you know, like, in you, and like, just being as polite as you can, just be like, hey, you know, I don't want to talk, or even like making up an excuse, like, hey, I don't have a lot of time to talk, you know, and I'm you know, like just engaging in the conversation and just being like, hey, I'm not interested. I have done that on a couple of occasions, and sometimes it goes really, really good and I get an apology, and then sometimes it goes really, really bad.
Yeah, and it's really hard to do. I usually take the route of just never saying anything at all, and it's worked out for me thus far. But who knows? Like, it's dangerous any way that you do it. Like, you could ignore someone and they could get really, 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 really upset with you, or you could tell them, "Hey, I'm not interested," and then they get really, really, really upset with you. And it's kind of like, and that's kind of like the purpose behind this is like, these behaviors need to stop. Like, there's no, like, yeah, we can put a Band-Aid on it for now, but like, at the end of the day, no one is going to feel comfortable and safe until they stop.
Yeah. So those are like, you know, like an example of some types of minor harassment. Okay. I would like to move on to the next form of harassment. So, sexual harassment. So,
yeah,
go ahead.
Well, just kind of before we move on to the sexual harassment part, you know, there are other forms of like online, I wouldn't say it's harassment, so to speak, but just online responses that do a lot of harm to the community. So, you know, I tweeted something like when Kaya won seniors, the seniors division, right? She won the seniors division.
Yeah.
At internationals this year, North American internationals. And I tweeted something that was like, this is really important. Like, other girls need to see this because they need to see they have like a place in this game. And, you know, of course I got the comment, I hate that you have to bring gender into this. Why do you have to bring gender into this? Gender has nothing to do with skill. But, you know, like, if a girl were to read that and like say, oh, well, ooh, I don't know if I feel comfortable if like I can't celebrate the fact that I'm like you know, one of the only girls to do this, or that I'm like a really good girl in the community.
Yeah, you need to have role models. Somebody you can relate to.
Right, and if we don't give them the option to celebrate and the option to like enjoy that, and like, because it is a big deal. It is a big deal when a girl top cuts at events, because, or even wins them, because it sets the standard and it gives, like, you know, I think what really hits home for me is when Natalie got second at Collinsville.
Yeah, I was crying that day. I was so excited, and like, not to
she's had like a lot of other big accomplishments.
Oh, she definitely has.
To see that, like, in Masters, like, to see a Masters girl, because, you know, of course there's a lot less girls in Masters compared to the other age divisions, to see a Masters girl top cutting at a regional is, to me, a huge deal.
Like, could you imagine seeing some like a woman like making that type of accomplishment as a child, like in the card game? Like, that's incredible. That's super cool. Like, I'm not trying to fangirl about Natalie or anything, but I have some major respect for that woman, and I don't, like, I see her as a role model personally.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of weird, like, because I had already been playing the game at that point, but just for me, like, being a newer player and seeing that was super cool. It's very inspiring. Like, I think I also think she's just like a great person, and I think that she's a good role model in general, but just the fact, you know, like, just seeing her in that position, like, it's important. And the only way that we're going to keep girls in the game, because you see like a pretty decent attendance for girls in juniors and seniors, but you don't see them carrying over to Masters. And Noah, I feel like you can kind of speak to this point, because you are someone that was playing in seniors and, you know, took a little bit of a break between Masters. But the only way we're going to get girl players to transfer over to Masters is if we make sure that the environment is comfortable and that they don't feel weird or tentative about men in the community, especially if they're going to hit on them when they're underage.
Yeah. But I mean, those were all really good, valid points. I completely agree with you there. So moving on to the sexual harassment in the community, I'll go ahead and start off with with one of my own personal experiences. So after getting into the Masters again, at this point it's been like a year and a half, I've found my friend group, I've been to a lot of events, I've friended a lot of people, and this specific situation, I don't feel like this person was trying to harm me. They were actually somebody I used to be friends with. I don't feel like they were trying to harm me or put me down, but what made me very uncomfortable is the comments that they made on my body, and the fact that they felt like they had a say on what I wore and my body in general. Really upset me and made me feel comfortable. I had a new profile picture that I posted or whatever, and I felt like really nice in it. You know, everybody's like, oh, you know, you look so nice, thanks, got likes on it. And out of nowhere, I get a message saying, hey, what are you doing, LOL? And I said, I'm laying around, why? They responded, not what I meant, LOL. The last picture you posted on Facebook, it's so seductive, LOL. My response was, really? How? Because I have a low-cut shirt on? Sorry if my boobs make you uncomfortable. Sorry to inform you, but I am a girl and I have those. He responded with, oh, I don't have an issue with it. I'm just wondering why you're flaunting your body. Maybe you want to see guys creep over you, but I know you don't need that. I responded with, not really. I just felt like they look really nice in the photo like I do in all the pictures I posted. He responds, I shouldn't have to say anything, or I shouldn't have said anything, sorry. And I go, yeah, probably not. And then I was just trying to, like, since he was a friend, I was trying to, like, just kind of, like, forgive him and move on with it. So I said, it's fine, I get it a lot in this community, and I just don't tolerate it. He replied, I'm really not trying to put you down or even drool over you. I just wanted to say friend to friend, it's very provocative. And at that point, it kind of set me off. And I responded, well, I'm just saying friend to friend, it's not, and you're just making that way.
It's amazing the way that other people decide when a woman's body is sexual and when it's not. There is a really great tweet, and unfortunately I don't have it on me to be able to give credit to the person who made it, but it was something like, my body is sexual the moment that I'm turned on, not when you are.
Yeah, and you know, something, some of you may have seen my post in a specific Pokemon group, and one of the comments I got from that specific conversation was, do you have the picture for reference? So, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious that this man asked this question, because this guy actually thought he had a say and thought that the picture makes a difference on what happened in this conversation. Feel free to make whatever comments you want about this on this post, like whatever, but it just blows my mind that men think they have a spot in a woman's life to tell them what they can and can't wear, and if it's sexual and if it's disgusting, and so on.
Right. Like, it's nuts. Like, the girl that got in trouble at
at Toronto with the romper.
Yeah. You know, I understand that you can't just change society, but that was very poorly handled. For those of you who are unaware of the situation, they had a judge come over and tell her she had to zip up her hoodie because she was showing too much cleavage.
Yeah.
And just the way that it was handled, and I don't want to get too specific into it because it's not my story to tell, but I just think that it was poorly handled. I think that we can do better about treating women with their bodies.
Exactly. And I understand it as a children's tournament and you need to be modest. And again, I agree the way the situation was handled was very poorly, especially since that was something she was told in the middle of her match.
I don't even want to hear like the thing, because there are men that walk around with literal hentai on their play mats and on their dice bags.
I mean, honestly,
and on their t-shirts. So I can't stand when like men make that argument, because until that changes, and I know that is technically against the rules, but until that changes generally, I don't want anybody to comment on my body.
Honestly, yeah. Like, moving on to a different story that is on sexual harassment. A woman the woman of the name Christine Johnson has shared a lot with us, and we're actually going to share two of her stories today. I'll start with the first one, though, over sexual harassment. So on her story, she said, I have had male players lie and say I had sex with them. I am not the type of person to be ashamed of human sexuality, so these lies basically just highly annoy me. However, if my personality was different, or if I had a previous traumatic experience with sex, lying about having sex with me could have caused a lot of emotional harm. I like to think it's not hard to tell the truth, but for some people consistently being truthful doesn't seem possible. I'm not sure how to handle liars exactly, because the compulsive liar actually believes their own lies. But just a reminder, not everyone is mentally well, and keeping a distance from people like that is probably the best course. So again, we have another like sexual harassment story where there's It's 100% unnecessary. I feel like I shouldn't have to explain much more on all of the inappropriate content that these men probably have said to Christine. And, again, the example back to my story, where that my story was less harmful. I feel like maybe nobody ever told him that that's not his place to comment on my body, where the situation I felt like is this one was 100% harmful to Christine by making up these rumors and such. So as we progress with the stories, the next story is about, it's with Christine as well, and it's her experience it's an experience that put her in a lot of danger, a lot of discomfort, and something that could have potentially harmed her, honestly, like physically. It definitely was harmful mentally and emotionally on so many different levels. It was, I hope she has a restraining order against this man. So you can go ahead and, go ahead and get right on into this story, Erin.
Okay, so earlier this year, I experienced real harassment. Someone I trusted and thought was a friend was very hurtful to me for reasons still unknown. Very lewd and sexual fake profiles were created of me and circulated over social media. The harassment was not limited to the virtual world. This person impersonated me and attempted to set up medical appointments in my name. I had objects and items sent to my personal residence. He tried to hack into my personal accounts unsuccessfully and dabbled with credit card applications in someone else's name sent to my home. All the while, he still held up the front as my friend, ally, and confidant. What is disturbing is he got to see firsthand the pain and turmoil it was causing me, because he has the very one responsible because he was the very one responsible and the one I least expected. He even offered a reward leading to the discovery of the harasser's identity. That's just that's
messed
next
up.
Level. As me and some others in the community tried to figure out who was behind this, my harasser tried to pin this on a very good friend of mine. There was a point when I wondered if there was anyone other than my harasser, who I didn't know was my harasser, I could really trust. I involved TPCI. They were serious and worked with me on the solution. However, I will say this. If I did not have an IP address and a corroborating source, I am not sure TPCI would have done anything. In some of their correspondence, they state that they did not get involved. They don't get involved in interpersonal issues. Getting an actual IP address is not as easy as it looks on TV. I was lucky. At Oceana earlier this year, a TPCI representative spoke to him. I'm not privy to that conversation. All I know is that it stopped for me, and that was enough. To this day, if he sees me at an event, he turns and walks the other way. This is just fine. As I am writing this, I still don't think I fully processed all those events, so I'm not sure what advice to give on the situation like this, except go to the authorities, don't be a victim, and ask others for help. And as silly as it may sound, forgive someone even if they hurt you. Forgiveness is for you, not them.
I just got goosebumps from hearing that again, but her last statement is pretty huge, and it takes a big person to do that. Even though if the forgiveness is for you, it's the first step to moving on from a situation that escalated that far.
And I just want to say to all the girls too, like, it is okay for you to be angry and upset and frustrated. And if forgiveness is hard for you, you don't owe anybody anything. But I do think it takes a really big person to be able to forgive someone that has caused them so much pain.
Yeah, and a huge a counter argument to women's sexual harassment community, which shouldn't be a thing, but something I see being said a lot is, oh, well, if this is an issue, why isn't anybody talking about it? And you know, that's a big reason on why we're doing this podcast today and sharing all of these stories. And I could go on hours and hours reading all of these stories, but the specific story is very important for people to hear, because when there is a giant thread going on whatever Facebook post and people are gaslighting each other, why would you want to post your story right there and then? You're not going to be respected. This is why a lot of people don't hear these stories because of that, and they expect to hear them now and then. That's not a safe place for that person to go ahead and share their story. And some people can't share their stories, especially if they're going through authorities at the moment or going through a TPCI ticket.
Right. And I think it's important to note that there are different groups in the community that have been made for different reasons. There is an all-girls group, I believe. I don't know who runs it. I personally don't run it, so I can't say that I can let any girls in. I don't even remember the name of it, but I'll try to link it below.
It's Battle Girls.
Battle Girls. Okay. I'm very new to it. Bailey just added me, so
sorry, Pokemon Battle Girls. There we go.
Pokemon Battle Girls. And that's definitely a safe space, but also, like, I think that it is important for us to share it in the other groups as well, because those are the groups that have men in them. And if we're trying to change perspectives and we're trying to change this community for the better, like, men need to hear it. And I'm honestly, like, just to be transparent, I'm just kind of sick of being told that, like, we're, you know, having it brushed off and getting responses like, oh, we'll just block them, or even having your posts deleted.
Yeah. You know, all of these things do happen, and in a way, you have to acknowledge them, but not let it bother you, because at the end of the day, all we can do is continue talking about this until it gets fixed, you know. And I will be the first person, whenever I see anybody trying to say, like, oh, well, I'm not, you know, why are you trying to get all these guys to bow down to you girls? I'm not gonna do that, because, you know, you're trying to get attention. You're trying to get attention, you know. The first thing I'm going to turn to is, okay, you are ignorant on the situation and you don't understand. And I feel like a lot of people go right into the fact that, and it's really hard not to go right into an argument about it and be like, oh, well, how could you even think that way? That's unhumane, and in ways it definitely is unhumane. But when you're dealing with somebody that's ignorant and sensitive, you should be very respectful towards them. And I'm a huge believer in kill them with kindness.
Yeah, but it really, I mean, it sucks. It sucks to share your story and put yourself out there and just be told that you're looking for attention or that your post doesn't have merit unless you expose the names of the individuals involved. And I also am sick of like literally every woman in this community saying there's a problem and the response being, well, I don't see it. Where's your proof? Well, your proof is that women in this community are coming forward and saying that there's a problem.
Yeah. And, you know, like, and again, like, we've covered this before, and, you know, we don't have to tell you a name. We don't have to share. We don't even have to share screenshots. We don't have to share our story. I think it's important that we do talk about it. I think it's important that people's voices are heard and situations are being talked about as examples, but nobody owes you anything ever in life.
Right. And I'm sorry if it makes you uncomfortable. Good, because it makes us uncomfortable. And yeah, it's an uncomfortable topic, but if you're open and you listen and you understand. I had a disagreement with a friend today about the whole like exposing names. This person said, oh, I don't agree with that. And I was like, well, let me take this opportunity to explain to you why I feel differently. And I did. And you know what he said? He didn't, you know, whether I change his mind or not is irrelevant because it's a matter of opinion, but he was open to me and he listened to me. And that's really all we're asking for.
Exactly. Yeah. And this applies to more than just what we're talking about. And I'm going to go ahead and read something that Christine also wrote to us about, is that these things don't just happen in the Pokemon community. They happen anywhere because some people are either jerks or are acting like jerks. And some people need more nourishment to their self-esteem or have forgotten their own self-respect. So I hope everyone becomes reacquainted with their self-esteem, and cruel behavior is now on the decline.
Right. I think it also extends to social events in the Pokemon community as well. Because at the end of the day, whether it happens at a tournament or it happens outside a tournament, be online or at a bar or whatever it is, you still, at the end of the day, have the potential to sit down across the table from that individual. And I think that your actions carry with you no matter where you are, no matter what setting you're in. I had a guy at Worlds this year come up to me at the bar, and he was intoxicated, but he like got very close to my ear, like almost to the point where his lips were touching my ear, and he just said, "You're really hot." And I was like,
disgusting.
It really creeped me out. Now, I kind of brushed it off because it did happen at a bar, but at the same time, like, I never want to be across the table from that individual because it reminds me of being in a really uncomfortable situation.
I'm sorry to laugh at that, but it's like,
no,
it's just it's just like, even just like small situations like that where I guess the reason why I'm laughing at it is because it's just so relatable. And I feel like every girl has kind of come across something like that before.
And just on the topic as well of like, yeah, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say the S word, sexism. You can be accused of sexist behavior and not be a sexist yourself. Not be actively participating in acts of sexism. You may commit an act of sexism. Women commit acts of sexism all the time. but the difference is how you react and how you grow from that experience.
Yeah.
And my friend Sarah just literally just tweeted at me, to men being branded as a sexist is worse than actually being a sexist. So it's kind of like, and this kind of ties back to something that Serena actually said in, because like we mentioned in the beginning of this podcast, this is not the first time that this topic has been discussed. There were 2 episodes that were done on the Super Broadcast that are fantastic and are on the same topic. So if you finish this one and you're craving more, we'll go ahead and link those below. And they were done on the Super Broadcast. It was episode 30 and episode 38.
Yep.
And I believe it was in episode 38 where Serena said, you know, that men are like, once I'm accused of sexism, suddenly the world is against. And that's not true. It's not a sexually transmitted infection that you can't get rid of. It's just sometimes you do shitty things, and unfortunately sometimes they fall into that category.
Yeah, and I mean,
like I said,
I personally have friends that I still talk to this day that have made some very unnecessary comments about me being a girl in the game, and the moment I said, hey dude, that wasn't cool, like, you know, like, I did not appreciate, like, that's so wrong of you to say, you know. They apologized to me and they're like, yeah, you know, like, I was wrong, you know, and I'm sorry. I was just trying to mess around. I was just trying to joke around with you. Okay. And that's not an excuse, but sometimes people are generally trying to joke around about things like that. And I'd be like, okay, well, that's not a cool joke. And they're like, okay, I'm sorry. And that subject is never touched again. Okay.
Right. And making it clear that you're uncomfortable with that is important. And I also just want to emphasize, you know, we want to give tips on, you know, standing up for yourself and providing clarity, but you also, again, don't owe anybody anything.
Yeah, exactly.
If a behavior makes you uncomfortable and your response is to get away from that situation and as far away as you can, then that response is appropriate.
Taking responsibilities for your actions. So we're going to go ahead and go back to Christine. She pretty much wrote an article for us. That's why we keep kind of touching bases back on her. She gave a lot of good content to us.
I don't know you, Christine, but you're awesome.
She's absolutely amazing. So what she said was, I think the biggest thing to help the community is for people to take responsibility. If something you are saying or doing is upsetting somebody else, take responsibility and stop. Don't be a jerk. Oftentimes players will joke around and banter back and forth. Just because the joke was funny one time doesn't mean it's funny the next time. So just respect that and back off if somebody says they've had enough. If you're the one on the receiving end, don't be afraid to speak up and vocalize your feelings. If you're not getting anywhere, ask others for help. Being responsible means that if you want to see or hear something wrong, you don't walk or look away. You don't walk. Oh my goodness. If you're not getting anywhere, ask others for help. Being responsible means that if you see or hear something wrong, you don't walk or look away. And if someone has asked you for help, they are still strong, but they need some of your strength too. Something else I'm going to add to that is if you ever feel like you can't speak up to the person, you can go get help, or you can most definitely report the person as well.
Yeah, because this is something that I don't feel like we have mentioned this entire podcast, but harassment is actually against the rules.
Yes, it definitely is against the rules. Fun fact.
And, yeah. And, you know, if you ever feel like you're being harassed, it is important to report it. But also, if you don't feel comfortable reporting it, there are so many people in this community, like we said in the beginning, that are, you know, have their arms wide open. Noelle and I are 2 of them, mostly because we've experienced all of this before and understand. And you will never hear any, you know, we're here to listen non-judgmentally.
Exactly, yeah. So we have a couple other things that we want to touch base on for kind of giving any kind of girls in situations that they need to get out of, or need to maybe like find a way to handle themselves. So Erin, I don't know if you want to go ahead and start on that.
Yes. So again, I know I've said this so many times, but I just want to emphasize that it is not your responsibility to make up for the actions of guys. But we also do want to preach that, just simple safe things that you can do to kind of like protect yourself from this. So the first, of course, is being like, I encourage people to interact with other people in the community and find people that, because you'd be surprised how many people really do like think that, and how many guys think this is an issue as well, that would be on your side no matter what. And by gaining those allies, you kind of gain support and gain a little bit of backup when it comes to these situations. I know it's come in handy for me multiple times. And I'm not saying like form a gang. I'm just saying like it's good to know like where your allies are.
Form a gang to fight harassment.
Honestly though, like if anybody is trying to form a girl gang in Pokemon, like hit me up.
Oh my god, stop it.
But I think that but it's important to also understand that necessarily, like, that definitely helps, like, as far as online harassment goes, but when you're in person, to talk a little bit about safety and, like, what to do.
Exactly, yeah. Like, if someone reaches you out, like, with romantic interest, you don't have to be immediately alarmed, as if you're not interested, you can set your boundaries, and you should immediately, if you are comfortable with that. And again, like, if you are not, you definitely need to go and reach out to somebody else to help you as well. Or if you feel like taking the course of just ignoring it and it'll eventually go away, you can do that as well. Another note is, if you are the one that's trying to initiate romance, don't, unless you actually know the person. Like, I'm so serious. Just, like, be friends with them first, guys. Seriously, like, your style of hitting on women may be completely different on what other girls may feel is appropriate. And if you are questioning anything that you may say to a person, don't.
Right, and it is really off-putting when you're at a tournament in a competitive setting and somebody hits on you. Like, it's interesting, and this is something that they discuss. I can't remember if it's episode 30 or 38 of the Super Run cast. Just how the difference between the post-match conversation goes with men and men versus women and men, and just how, like, it's totally cool to make small talk and, like, be kind to someone, but, like, you don't know that person, and you don't know, like, whether they're into guys, whether they have a boyfriend or not. And so, like, in what other world besides, like, Tinder can you, like, just come up to a girl and be like, "You're really hot, can I have your number?"
Yeah, honestly.
Like, when has that ever worked?
And I feel like, like, there's people out there that play the numbers game.
Yeah, that too. So I think we're going to wrap it up here. I don't know about you, Noelle, but I'm feeling very drained because this topic makes me sad. But, we just want to end by saying, like, this is a really complex topic. And I know for a fact that we're going to get backlash. This is going to be posted in some group where people just take apart our arguments with irrational arguments of their own. I don't think that gender and the way that women are treated in the community as a topic is a part of the issue. I think that really it's just we should all be working to treat each other better. And I know that this might seem like this podcast has been all over the place, but just keep in mind that Noelle and I just really wanted to protect the identities of all the individuals that were brave enough to share their stories. And we also just kind of wanted to make this good, because even though it's a complex topic, it's really, really important to both of us, because I think that both of us really just want to see some change in our community. It's a shame that this is still such a, like I said in the beginning, I feel like it's almost a point, and it needs to be talked about.
Yeah, and I think what we did with this podcast is very different. We provided a platform for people to talk about what's going on in the community, because I don't feel like when this topic is brought up, nobody wants to really share their stories. So I'm really glad that we were able to create a platform so maybe more people are kind of understanding some of the issues that are happening almost onto a day-to-day basis, from little to large.
Right, and this whole thing is not to like demonize men in this community, but more so like offer examples and situations and just kind of make it like a learning experience. And I also just want to open up our Twitter and the comment section, and just anywhere that you can contact us for questions about this, because I don't know about you, but I would like to do a part 2 to this, just because there's so much that we can talk about. And I feel like we just can't really feasibly do it all in one podcast.
I can completely agree with that.
If you are interested, like I said, we're going to go ahead both of the Super Broad episodes on this same topic, as well as the amazing Kenny Wisdom article that was written actually when this podcast goes up tomorrow, December 8th. It will be the birthday of that article, which was probably the last time that this topic was really just front and center in the community, as much as it has been this week. You know, there have been incidents that have happened throughout the year that has brought this topic up, but not quite as much as, like, I feel like this week has just been me yelling on Twitter. And I'm just exhausted. I'm glad that we can end on this note.
Exactly. And I just want to thank every single guy that has ever stood up for me and anybody else that has been screaming from the hilltops that, what's going on is wrong, and I'm here to help any woman that needs help, and defending us and going through these arguments with all of these people, and just spreading the awareness as well. Again, another special shout out to Kenny. I can't even tell you how grateful I am for that article, as it gave me some type of strength to actually empowerment to really talk about this today as well. So again, I'll go ahead and link in everything below that we have talked about in this podcast. I really appreciate you guys sticking around and listening to this, as this is a very important topic. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys.
See y'all next time.
Bye.